I feel like I personally, when I look at the square full of art, I get super excited, and it's like it takes a certain level of creativity and inspiration to see something else that can be on there and to transform that space so that people can enjoy all of that. And I'm also curious how you think it connects the community, having that visual art in this space.
Yeah, we'll give them something to talk about.
Yeah, that's true.
So my name is Ellen Cunningham, and I work at the University of Alberta Hospital as the curator of the University of Alberta Hospital Art Collection. And I do that part-time, 3 days a week. And then I also have my own business, Ellen Cunningham Art Consulting. So I'm an art consultant as well.
Hi, my name is Amber, and you're watching HABU. I'm the director of the Works Art and Design Festival. I've been enjoying this work since 2005 and love making art in spaces for people.
What kind of role do you think art plays within a space, especially a place like a hospital?
Right. Well, if I can just give like a little bit of a background caveat to why, how I became an art historian and working in curatorial work. My dad is an architect, which I think I've talked to you about before. And I mean, the design of our world is directly related to how we feel about it, how we experience it, how it's easy or hard, the symbolism of everything that we sort of have in our lives, civically or in our communities. So in many ways, I don't really distinguish between the sort of effect of architecture or visual art. It's all part of, or design, sort of more broadly. It is all part of objects or spaces or images that sort of reflect our society, our human experience, our values. And so all of these things are, and within the hospital, it is often looked at separately, the design of the spaces, the design of the building, and then, what we put in it, the visual art or plants is a big part of what can sort of transform the feeling of a space. But all of these things are connected to what our world, what our society represents, and then also how we feel in those spaces in our society. So I don't know if I clearly answered your question, but those are the thoughts that kind of came up.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's exactly what I need of the architecture and everything within it, within the space really impacts people and how their days go. And that's very important in a setting like a hospital where you need that sort of any extra support that you can get to get you through difficult times. So having this sort of visual art or plants or any sort of excitement or distraction around you that could comfort you in those times is pretty important. What are some of the considerations that you have to take when choosing art for a hospital space or a hospital gallery?
There are more considerations than certainly I realized when I started. Very specifically things like color. Red is an issue for many people as it kind of can represent blood. There's a lot of kind of bodily, visceral references that can come up in images, even in abstract artwork. So we're looking for things that could be triggering for people, that might be discomforting or make them associate with something related to a procedure or something physical that they're experiencing. And that's part of the point of what we're trying to achieve, is have them be more connected to how they feel as an individual, and their identity, as opposed to how they're feeling in terms of their illness. This is specifically patients in the hospital. We also think about symptoms that people are experiencing in the hospital. So one example is nausea is very common as a side effect of medication, or a side effect of, or a symptom of an illness. And there are things can be triggering for nausea, like, so references to food in artwork is would be a concern. Sort of like nausea or dizziness, anything that can be kind of a blurry or not settling. So we look for, we were looking at an artwork recently, and the landscape was kind of tilted, was tipped, and a very straight horizon line. So looking specifically at landscape work would be preferable, so that people kind of feel a sense of groundedness, and they're not distorted in what they're looking at. So all of those are very specific considerations to, like, the content of imagery and details of color and so on. And then sort of we kind of go out from there. So we're looking for proportional artwork. And this is where the art and the architecture are very much linked, because we've done research within the hospital with patients and staff on artwork that they feel is beneficial, or they experience in a positive way. And one of the links that's always there is that they recognize that it is proportionate to its placement. And it's just something that most people naturally identify. So if you put a tiny little piece on a giant wall, it's like that, it's discordant. It's like, what is that doing there? And so we really think about the artwork within the architecture and how it fits within the architecture and the spaces. And that is also linked to color. We have painted walls in the hospital. So they're for wayfinding. Each floor has a different color associated with it. And so there has to be sort of a cohesion of color of the artwork to the wall colors. So those are a few examples, but there are many more, and I guess I'll just mention one more related to the context. So if we place an artwork within a mental health unit versus within a urology unit, if there's any way that we can sort of make work appropriate, or make sure it's not appropriate. So the urology example is, there's no artwork related to water in urology, because a lot of people have bladder issues. There may have water could be triggering for them in terms of their symptoms. And then in mental health, we're wanting works that it will either calm the mind, or in some cases works that reflect a mental health experience. So we're very considerate of each unit and the health experience of the individuals in those units. Yes.
I'm also curious, if you know about the kind of history of the hospital building, like the UHF and the Stollery, and if you know anything about that?
Yeah. Well, the University of Alberta Hospital opened originally in 1906, so it's a long-standing healthcare facility in Edmonton, and of course it would have opened sort of coinciding with the University of Alberta being established in Edmonton. And so the original building was a lovely brick building on the same site. And it operated through the First World War, the Second World War. There's lots of interesting history related to its development through those decades up until the 70s, when Edmonton had really started to grow in population in a significant and exponential way. And they recognized that they needed to increase healthcare facilities. And because of the centrality of the University of Alberta Hospital, it was one of the ones that was determined to be expanded. The Misericordia had opened in the West End, and there was other hospitals being built, or two other hospitals being built, but the University of Alberta Hospital needed to be expanded, and they decided they had to tear down the building and replace it. So they hired, it's the same architects as the Eaton Centre in Toronto. And this was a note that I had that I can't put my finger on of who that architect is. They wanted to bring nature in. So there were, unfortunately not anymore, but plants everywhere in the hospital when it was first opened. Huge atrium spaces with tons of natural light. Because of the natural light in the interior atrium spaces, more rooms were able to have natural light because there's windows facing inward as well as on the exterior of the building. Each unit had an entrance space that was filled with a suite. It sort of had this like semicircle entrance area with seating and a reception area, and that whole space had a dedicated artwork, a series of art in that space. So they spent $1 million on art when they first opened, and placed work in all the patient rooms. The patient rooms were all prints, and in all the public areas, it was all paintings and sculpture. And they had dedicated a series of artworks to each of the unit entrances. Unfortunately, there were renovations, and all of this has changed since, but it was very, very thoughtfully designed in terms of the patient, staff, and visitor experience. And light was considered. The sort of verdant experience of having plants throughout the building was important. And thankfully, due to really thoughtful and well-researched people who were involved in the design, art was a big part of the design of the building. So they dedicated a space for McMullen Gallery, and that was original to the 1986 design. So since the building opened, we've had a dedicated gallery space to exhibit art. And then, as I mentioned, $1 million was spent on artwork to be placed throughout the hospital. And there was a committee which the architecture team was involved with in selecting artwork that was appropriate for all the spaces. And it wasn't perfect, but there was a ton of thoughtful selection criteria that was put into selecting artwork. Only as I believe only Alberta artists were acquired. So a major boost to Alberta artists as well, when $1 million was spent on artwork for this building. And the building opened in 2 phases. One section with 1 atrium, and then the subsequent phase was opened, I think, a year later. And it has gone largely unchanged, with now, the Walter Mackenzie Center has gone largely unchanged with some renovations, but we've also added buildings. So there's the Mazankowski Heart Institute and the Kay Edmonton Clinic as well now.
Yeah. And it's pretty impressive that like they were already trying to include art as a consideration kind of early on.
And even before 1986, because we do have pieces in the collection that predate this building. So an example is an incredible portrait of Colonel Mewborn, who is a physician who worked for the military, and this operated, I mentioned the World Wars, so he sort of led this site as a military hospital during World War II, dealing with veterans coming back Edmonton. And so a beautiful portrait was done of him. and that is in the collection. We have a Roy Ledbetter sculpture that is a massive sculpture representing the symbol of medicine with the snake, and that predates this building as well. So, and just to sort of tie that into the committee that designed the hospital and selected the artwork, they were looking to examples in Europe where there was often a connection between the church and hospital sites, and commissioning of frescoes for hospitals. The ceilings and the walls would be painted. So much beautiful detail in the design of the architecture in many of those hospital spaces where there was, you know, leaf gilding and around doorways, and all of those examples were kind of thought about and considered when they were designing this building, which is of course a much more modern, it's kind of more of a postmodern design, but that there's a history to the beautification of healthcare spaces and how that affects the healing experience for patients. And they were thinking about that history in Europe when they designed this building.
What is the overall goal of the Works organization?
Well, I would say that at the Works, we believe that visual art is really important for like human expression as well as human communication, that's like an essential experience. And because of that belief, the goal is to ensure that there are a lot of opportunities for people to experience visual art in meaningful ways. Of course, there are spaces like that existing in the world. We call them galleries. Not everybody goes into them. And yeah, we just want to make sure that that's an opportunity that everybody has to get introduced to visual art and maybe visit a gallery later.
Right. And one of the ways that you do that is with the Works Art and Design Festival that you put on the square every year. And the square is a pretty big empty space, but I feel like when you fill it with that visual art, it gets really full and really creative and exciting. But I'm wondering how you feel that transforms like people's everyday lives when they walk through the square.
Yeah, Sir Winston Churchill Square, I mean, it's a big flat piece of concrete. It's also a civic gathering space, right? So there is a certain gravity. If something is happening at the square, then people want to go there because people are there. And during the Works Festival, art is also there. And so, yes, it transforms it in a way that I think even other festivals don't, because what we want to do is activate the potential of this space where people gather to be like a place where we share an experience. So because visual art is sort of unique in that it offers a diversity of experience, it can speak to people and spark conversations kind of beyond language, like it points to communication beyond language, then I think there's a lot of value in just experiencing something that you weren't expecting,
Right.
and experiencing a space that you might go to regularly as a different place.
The plaza in front of the City Hall, the Churchill Square, is quite massive,
It is, yes.
and it's good for events such as the Taste of Edmonton that we had there just now, the art festival.
The Works Art and Design Festival. There's also Street Performers Festival. Just so many festivals happen on Churchill Square,
Yeah,
which is quite nice in that it allows that to be the case. However, I find that the concrete is quite unforgiving in the summer. It really, it reflects that heat back up, so it feels really hot, and there's not a lot of cover on Churchill Square.
trees are missing for sure.
Yeah.
They're always missing. But there's still some park to the side of it,
Yeah.
right? So it's
Yeah.
not just fully concrete.
What about the organization itself? Because you bring together different people for the festival season, right? You have a lot of interns that come together. And how do you find that space, having this space for artists and students and all these interns to communicate, how does that impact like their futures and the way that they feel within Edmonton or the community?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you point to another sort of special thing about what the festival is too. So, just sort of sticking with Churchill Square for a moment, you have the art enthusiast public who are coming in order to see visual arts. You have the festival enthusiast public that are coming just to see what's happening. You have the Works to Work interns, which are the group of the cohort of Works employees who are coming together from various backgrounds, who are really quite deeply invested in the specific artwork that's being presented. You, of course, have the artists presenting, you have the communities that are supporting it, and then you have people that are looking for various entry points to experience the visual art. So, that sort of integrated network, the volunteers, of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
The volunteers are a big
The
part of
volunteers
it.
are a big part of it. And the volunteers also take specific training to learn about the work, and not just to teach people about the work, but to do a guided experience, right? So to maximize the opportunity where people are interfacing with the work, to think about it, to bring your own perspective, to sort of expand and break down what that art might be communicating. So that in itself, I think, is in a nutshell sort of a collaborative experience. You know, how do the artists present something, and then a number of ambassadors at different levels, volunteers and interns, et cetera, as well as the public, come together to have a discussion, to create an experience, to create new meaning, to just sort of build on the energy of the work itself.
Is there anything that you want people to know more about the Works Art and Design Festival? Or, because I would like to pivot about this building specifically.
Well, one thing that I think people don't really realize, especially in Edmonton, is that it's not very usual to have a festival that is centered on visual art and design. Especially if you look back to 1986, the first festival itself. It was a challenge for our founder to even convince the city that you could have a festival on visual art and design. But it has been proven to be an important and relevant anchor, and again, a really unique Edmonton experience. There are festivals all over the world that do focus on art and design now. Some of them are very short, some of them are very loud. But yeah, it's something that Edmonton has sort of grown up with over the last 40 years, and I think it's influenced how the quality of discussion and the interest and engagement in visual art from Edmontonians, by Edmontonians. We're in an interesting time right now where there are a lot of things that people need to put their energy on. And again, coming back to that core belief that visual art is an important human experience, both from the opportunity to express and also the opportunity to communicate beyond words, connect to community, and experience beauty. Like, it's such an important thing. And so even though we're kind of going through an interesting time where there's a lot of uncertainty, and I think a lot of folks are trying to figure out, where should I put my energy? What we want to do is look forward, because these times, tumultuous times, go up, they go down, and then they end.
Right.
And well, They come to a different resolution. When we come to a resolution of these tumultuous times, we want to make sure that there is something there for the arts, that the cultural fabric, that the baseline exists, that there's cultural infrastructure that can be built on. We don't want to start from zero.
Right.
Yeah,
Of course.
yeah.
You have 40 years of history
Yes.
within this organization. Wouldn't want to lose that.
No, we don't want to lose that. And we do want to build for the future. We want to make sure that that current voices have an opportunity to be part of this and to, again, like express that essential language that artists have, whether that be performance, painting, sculpture, conceptual work, to work through these times as well, right? So, yeah. Have that space, that voice for artists, have that conversation ongoing, and be there when we get through this particular rough patch.
And I know that you guys also have a program called Artists on the Wards.
Yes.
Could you speak a little bit about that?
Yes, we are very fortunate to have this program at the U of A Hospital. There are examples of it across North America, but we're quite rare in Canada to have this program. So it was started in the late 90s here, based on a program at a hospital in Florida. And the idea is there's different types of therapeutic arts. The type that we incorporate into our Artists on the Wards program is called participatory arts. So the artists that work in this program are not art therapists. They don't chart and track the sort of medical condition of the patients. They are trained artists, and they have an incredible expertise working with individuals and understanding their not medical, but sort of human conditions. So they work at the bedside with the patients on the units, and they bring various art modalities. So we have a musician, we have visual artists, and we have writers who go and work with patients who have maybe no experience. It might be their first experience with any kind of art. And they may just, for some of our writers, they may just ask them if they want to speak, and they can write a poem for them. Or they can offer to work with them. We had one time one of our literary artists on the wards helped someone write their life story. And so they're one of our artists described it as, whereas the medical professionals in the hospital sort of focus on what is wrong with the individuals under care here, our artists look at what's right about them. So they help to connect them to themselves. They'll either do an arts activity, which can also be sort of physically beneficial in terms of using their hands. We do geriatric programs in some of the units where they're might be limited in maybe post-stroke or other physical challenges. And so it's them sort of seeing themselves in a way they hadn't seen themselves recently or in a while, where they're using their full physical capacity at that time, and doing so in a really sort of joyful, there's no risk, it's just meant to be elevate their spirits and help them connect to themselves. And so we have artists working on the units, both staff and volunteer artists working on the units throughout the week. And we also run programs of arts in our public spaces, Music is Medicine series. We have artists working up in our the healing garden sometimes, where people can just observe them painting. It's a very, very successful program here.
I think over the years, there have been many moments, but a lot of them are really based in recognizing that there is an opportunity for anybody to engage in this work, whatever the work is that's being presented. I remember one year we had a somewhat esoteric performance piece going on. It involved the artist carrying something and looking very sad. And a member of the public came up, obviously, curious, but it was just like, what is this?
Right.
I said, oh, it's a performance piece. And we talked a little bit about what was happening there, and they're like, oh yeah, okay. And so this is like, and then offered an interpretation relatively unprompted. And there have been many interactions like that where people who maybe didn't even come to the festival on purpose, security guards were like, what is this about? And then with, very little sort of introduction, just the smallest bridge, then they're ready. They're ready to get into it, to think about what the artist wanted to do, what this piece might mean to them specifically, and to have a broader conversation about the work. And that to me is a really special thing. The Works owns this building. It's half of it is a heritage building from 1902, and then the other half was built up in 2009 as a permanent home for the festival. It's it's important to have a space. As you go through this building, I don't know if you'll have an opportunity to do that, you'll see that everything feels like very custom, but custom for whatever it is we want. Every space in this building is dual or triple purpose because we have seasonal needs, obviously. So places will become classrooms, they'll become offices, they'll become studios, they'll become galleries, they'll become production space, they'll be whatever it is that the times demand. And that flexibility, I think, is something that's really wonderful actually about galleries and Churchill Square. If, as you pointed out earlier, you have the imagination to see what the space can be.
Right.
I remember you telling me how the McMullen Gallery used to be very focused on patients, and but after COVID, you've kind of shifted to also focusing on staff. So how has the gallery, like what kind of space has it become for the staff?
Yeah, I think we took for granted that staff in the hospital had a place to go for them to, recharge, and the life on a unit can be very stressful for staff, where if they're working in intensive care or any surgical areas, they have staff rooms, and maybe that is their space where they can, relax and recharge. They can maybe go outside, although in Edmonton in the summer, or in the winter, that's difficult. We also have the healing garden. We have spaces, but what we did during COVID was didn't have tables. We didn't allow food in the gallery, and we just realized that during COVID, staff needed a place to disconnect from the units, from the stress, you know, all the masking that was required. They still had to mask in this space, but if they were eating, they could take their mask off. And so it just kind of started from there that we have been focused on patients, but if our staff aren't well and feeling nurtured and able to sort of manage their stress, then we're not able to serve our patients as well as we need to. So we've made our space more available to staff. We have regulars who come in here on their coffee breaks. We have we're trying to make sure that our staff is more aware of our programming. So in the past, we've offered programs in the gallery at noon hour that has been patient focused, and that has shifted. So we offer sound baths, meditation, yoga, and we really are trying to bring staff into the gallery, into McMullen Gallery for those programs, because they need it. Yeah. And we're hoping to do more programming up on the units. This is sort of our next phase of that, of trying to go, because staff have a really hard time leaving their units. It's a huge hospital, first of all. Getting down to McMullen Gallery can be a big journey for people. But sometimes they just are only able to take, 10 or 15 minutes. So that's sort of a future plan for us, is doing some programming up on the units that's really focused, maybe a little bit of sort of team building and fun, but also related to relaxation and sort of calming the central nervous system and using art to kind of go through that process.
That makes sense. Yeah, you get the entire community through art, and it's really a healing space and a recharging space, which is quite nice. Is there anything that you want people to kind of know, either about arts and health or the McMullen Gallery or anything, like sort of last remarks?
I think in general, for myself as a visual arts professional, one thing that I love about working in the hospital is that our audience is so diverse. We say that for many people coming into McMullen Gallery, it might be the first time they've ever had an experience with visual art. And I have worked in public art galleries before, and it was always a challenge to find our audience. Who are we targeting? Who do we want to get in the doors? And visual art can be very intimidating and very a lot of people can feel like they're a gallery is not a place for them. And I guess the goal with our programs within the hospital, McMullen Gallery, Artists on the Wards, and the art collection, is that what we offer in terms of the arts is for everybody, and that my goal professionally has always been to remove barriers and access to visual art. And it's unfortunate that people have to be in the hospital, but it's such a privilege to be able to work with the incredible healthcare staff that works here, with the patients and their families that don't want to be here, but they're here to get amazing care. And I think what we do here is a big part of what can help people heal and feel well. And I just am really, we're very lucky that we have the support and funding for this program, because not every hospital, even in Edmonton, but certainly Alberta and Canada, have the kind of support that we do. So it's something we work really hard to protect and sort of build support for, and for people to kind of recognize its value. And we hope to share that more and more beyond just the University of Alberta Hospital. We've been doing consulting for other sites, and we want to do more of that in the future. And good design and good visual aesthetics is such an important part of the sort of a sense of contentment and satisfaction and connection in our communities. And so we just want to do more and more and more of that as much as possible.
Amazing. Yeah, it sounds like something that honestly any space could use, that sort of like also putting some focus on visual art and making the space welcoming and calming for people, stuff like that.
Do you watch
But-
Severance? Do you watch the
Yes.
show Severance? I just love, even in that show where they have this like dystopic space
Mhm.
that is all about production and work.
Yeah.
But then they infuse it with these little bits of art that is like, it's like a bit dark. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's sharing the messaging of what I think is a cult leader. I'm not sure
Yeah.
what's going on there, but they anyways, visual art is used as such an interesting tool in that show, and just speaks to the fact that art is powerful and it's meaningful, and it speaks to the human experience, and even in like an underground dystopic world, it has importance, you know.
Mhm.